Lauda Air Flight 004 is flying above the thick jungles of Thailand on its way to Vienna. But a few minutes later, it vanishes, and locals from the ground notice a bright trail of flames falling down the sky. Where had Flight 004 gone, and what could have gone wrong in this normal flight? Flight 004 is currently at Bangkok's Dong Muang Airport preparing for a flight to Vienna. The flight is operated with a Boeing 767-300ER, registered as Oscar Echo Lima Alpha Victor, nicknamed Mozart, being delivered to Lauda Air on October 16, 1989. The plane is operated by Lauda Air, an Austrian airline founded by former Formula 1 racing driver Niki Lauda, who is the namesake of Lauda Air. On board Flight 004 is Captain Thomas John Welch, a 48-year-old with 11,750 flight hours who will be flying the plane. With him is Captain Josef Sumer, a 41-year-old with around 6,500 flight hours, along with 8 cabin crew members for a total of 10 crew. Along with that, there are 213 passengers, majority of which being Austrian, Hong Kongers, and Thai, making for a total of 223 occupants on board the plane. May 26, 1991. Lauda Air Flight 004 is landing at Bangkok Airport for a stopover from Hong Kong to Vienna. Flight 004 is boarding its 223 occupants as it continues on to Vienna. Flight 004 takes off from Bangkok at around 11:02 p.m. local time. As the plane was climbing, the pilots got a warning that the reverse thrust of engine 1 might deploy mid-flight. They had mostly done nothing about the warning, seeing that it was quote-unquote coming on and off. Flight 004 continued to climb to cruising, but as it was approaching 11:17, the pilots were discussing about putting the plane's rudder trim to the left. But only a few seconds later, engine 1's reverse thrust deployed mid-flight. When it deployed, the plane lost airflow on its left wing, causing it to suddenly bank left and dive down, entering a spiral to the ground as the pilots were trying to regain control of the plane. Several alarms started going off as the flight continued to dive down and overspeed towards the ground. As it was falling, the speed started to take a toll as the tail fin and horizontal stabilizers were torn off from the severe forces. The plane broke the sound barrier as it went over Mach 1, but as it continued down, the wings were torn off around the trailing edge, which at the same time ignited the fuel, causing whatever was remaining to burst into flames as it crashed towards the wooded jungle below. Here this time we have a reconstruction of the CVR, put with an animation I put of Flight 004's in-flight breakup. Flight 004's wreckage was spread across a square kilometer of area as the plane crashed in Phote National Park in the province of Suphanburi, with locals on the ground seeing a streak of flames across the sky as the plane was crashing. When Flight 004 crashed, locals and volunteer rescue teams looted the valuables of the passengers. None of the 223 occupants survived the crash, but as rescue workers came in, they took the bodies to a hospital, but due to improper storage and handling, they started decomposing. Most of the bodies were later identified, but 27 of them were never identified. During the crash, the plane's flight data recorder was destroyed beyond repair, so they had to rely on the cockpit voice recorder to find out what happened. During the investigation, Niki Lauda himself went to Thailand to assist with the investigators, who had to rely on the CVR to determine the cause of the accident since the FDR was damaged beyond recovery. They were able to conclude that the plane's reverser had deployed mid-flight pretty easily using the evidence that they had concurred. Since when Boeing was testing the 767's reverse thrusters while the plane was still in development, they were insisting that the reverse thruster couldn't deploy mid-flight. But they did a test in 1982, 9 years before Flight 004 crash, in which they deployed the reverse thrust while the plane was flying at 250 knots at 10,000 feet. When they did this, they didn't completely lose control of the plane, so Boeing had felt not to add an extra lock to the reverse thrust. But in the case of Flight 004, the plane was flying at nearly 25,000 feet going 400 knots. Nearly double that of the test flight, so when the reverse thrust deployed, they immediately lost control of the plane. Add to that, the pilots didn't know how to handle a thrust reverser deploying mid-flight, since the test by Boeing back in 1982 showed that they would still have control of the plane, and during simulations, reverse thruster deployments mid-flight weren't showing what would actually happen to the plane if it deployed. For what caused the engine's reverse thrust to deploy mid-flight, while it hasn't been completely concluded to this day, mainly due to how badly the plane's wreckage was destroyed, the main candidates were from an electrical system or a hydraulic system failure leading to the reverse thrust accidentally deploying. Lauda himself was very involved in the investigation, going as far as to be willing to fly a 767 with 2 pilots and deploy the reverser mid-air to see if it was truly recoverable. In the following months and years, Boeing modified the thrust reverser system by adding locks that would make the reverser unable to deploy if the plane's gear is not in the ground position. And in 1991, they asked airlines and operators to replace the thrust reverser system in over 1,600 aircraft to prevent another accident like Flight 004 from happening again. Lauda Air at that point had a few aircraft in its fleet, so with the crash of the 767, a quarter of their carrying capacity was destroyed. They leased new aircraft in the aftermath to try and offset the lost capacity. Niki Lauda, after all was finished, said that the crash and the following years into the investigation was the worst period of his life, more worse than the aftermath of a racing crash he had in 1976. A memorial and shrine was later erected around the crash site to commemorate all 223 victims of the crash. Lauda Air was able to recover during the following years, and there now hasn't been any more severe disasters involving reverse thrusters deploying mid-flight. Hey guys, sorry if this one's a little more low quality and took a lot longer than the other ones. My PC was suffering making that animation because I don't know how to do fire that well, so... But the next one should be a little more easier because, once again, no need to animate. Well, mostly. One of them already has a pre-made animation, so you can probably guess what the next few ones will be. Anyways, that's it for now. Bye!